The words cut through me like cold steel. "You're done here." Declan didn't even flinch when he said it, his smirk sharper than the termination letter clutched in his hand. Around the boardroom table, not a single pair of eyes dared to meet mine. 8 years of sacrifice, late nights, weekends traded for server rooms. Gone. All because I missed one thing: a birthday party. I walked out in silence, my heels clicking against the polished floor like punctuation marks to a sentence I hadn't written. I didn't look back. If I did, I might have shattered right there in front of them. But inside, one thought carved itself into me like fire against ice. This wasn't an ending. It was ignition. Hours earlier, the choice seemed so small, almost laughable. A harmless email had slid into my inbox. Mandatory attendance. Declan's birthday gala. Mandatory. For a party. I stared at it for too long, the glow of the screen reflecting off my half-empty coffee cup. Declan Ainsworth, the CEO's nephew. Entitled Thin Resume, Inflated Ego, he thrived on these events, where champagne replaced work and loyalty was measured by how loudly you clapped. But me, I was buried in something bigger. On my screen pulsed the last line of a security algorithm, 8 years in the making. My creation. My heartbeat translated into code, a billion-dollar system that was about to become the backbone of every global contract we touched. I whispered to myself, not tonight. The party would pass. The system couldn't wait. My phone buzzed against the desk, dragging me out of my focus. A message from my mom. "Sweetheart, dinner tonight? Please?" My chest tightened. She'd been in and out of the hospital for weeks, and guilt pulled at me like an anchor. I typed back quickly. "Tomorrow, I promise. Just need to finish this update." It wasn't a lie. This patch wasn't optional. Without it, the next board meeting would be war. My work wasn't just another product. It was protection. It was survival. Another ping. A Slack message from a colleague. Word is, Declan hates anyone who skips his parties. He calls it a loyalty test. A loyalty test? My lips curled into a bitter smile. I was loyal to the work, not his ego. But before I could reply, another message flashed. "Careful, Laura." I glanced at the clock. 9:45 p.m., I turned back to my code. If this was truly a test, I'd already chosen my side. The next morning, I stepped into a room colder than winter. Declan stood at the head of the table, his navy suit pressed, his expression dripping with triumph. His uncle, the CEO, sat with arms folded, stone-faced. "Laura," Declan said, drawing out my name like it tasted bitter. "Thanks for joining us on such short notice." I gripped the back of a chair, waiting for context. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face still. "As of this morning," he said, voice smooth as glass, "your employment is terminated, effective immediately." For a second, the words didn't land. Terminated? My mind scrambled. Budget cuts? Restructuring? But no. His smirk told the truth. "You've shown a lack of commitment," he continued. "Skipping last night's event? Not a good look for someone in your position. We need team players who respect our culture." My throat burned. I was the culture. For 8 years, I built the architecture that protected this empire. While others played politics, I played firewall, patching vulnerabilities they never even noticed. And now I was disposable, erased by a man whose biggest achievement was blowing out candles on a cake. I wanted to scream, to call out the absurdity, to fight. But outbursts don't win wars. Silence does. So I smiled faintly, even as the floor tilted beneath me. But Declan wasn't finished. He leaned across the table, his eyes glittering with cruelty. "Don't ever think you're more important than my family." It wasn't a warning. It was a declaration. My work, my sacrifices, my mother's mounting hospital bills. None of it mattered. Not compared to his bloodline. I gathered my things, the scrape of the chair loud in the suffocating silence. Declan watched me the whole way, his smirk never faltering. And as the door shut behind me, one thought detonated inside me like thunder. You just made the cost of loyalty unbearable, Declan, and you're about to pay every cent. On my desk, an envelope waited like an execution order. Cream-colored, embossed with the company's logo, my name typed in bold. Beside it, my monitor glared white with a single line of text. Your access has been revoked. 8 years. Erased with one sentence. The office hummed with false normalcy. Phones rang, keyboards clacked, but no one looked at me. The same people who once praised me for saving multi-million-dollar contracts suddenly found the floor tiles fascinating. I tore the envelope open. 2 pages of sterile legal jargon. Return your badge by end of day. That was it. No thank you. No acknowledgement of the billions I had safeguarded. Just an order to disappear. My fingers dug into the paper until the edge cut my skin. I wanted to storm back into that boardroom, slam the agreement on the table, and spit Declan's arrogance back in his face. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I packed slowly, every click of my keyboard echoing in my skull like a countdown. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. 5 words that stopped my breath. Leave the building. Cafe 27. And then a name. Jonas Hale. The man who'd vanished a year ago. The former CFO. The strategist who once knew every secret this company buried. If Jonas was reaching out now, it meant only one thing. My story wasn't over. It was just beginning. The bell above Cafe 27's door chimed as I stepped inside, clutching the cream envelope like a guilty secret. The place was nearly empty, just the soft hum of the espresso machine and 2 baristas trading gossip near the counter. My eyes swept the room until they landed on him. Jonas Hale. He sat in the far corner, charcoal coat draped over the chair, silver hair catching the morning light. He hadn't aged so much as he'd hardened, like time had chiseled him into stone. When his eyes met mine, sharp as ever, I felt my pulse stumble. Laura, he said, rising slightly to pull out the chair across from him. Sit. I lowered myself into the seat, my hands tight around the envelope. My throat felt dry. Jonas had disappeared a year ago with no farewell speech, no LinkedIn update, no whisper of his next move. One day he was CFO of the company, architect of billion-dollar acquisitions. The next he was gone. The rumor mill said he retired quietly, but I never believed it. You're wondering why I called? He said, voice measured. I nodded. Words felt fragile in my mouth. Jonas leaned in, elbows resting on the table, his tone calm but deliberate. Before I walked out of that building, I set something in motion. For you? For me? The words slipped out before I could stop them. He smiled faintly, like a man savoring a secret. When you started building that algorithm, I knew its value. And I knew people like Declan wouldn't protect you if politics got ugly. So I built you a safety net. I frowned, sifting through old memories. Late nights when Jonas shoved compliance stacks across my desk, insisting I read the fine print. I'd skimmed, trusting him. What kind of net? I asked cautiously. A trust, Jonas said. It holds an LLC, Callaway Systems. 6 months ago, you signed the papers without realizing, buried in those compliance documents. If you ever left voluntarily, nothing would change. But if you were removed without cause, like you were yesterday, the LLC assumes ownership of your work. Every patent, every line of code. The words hit harder than Declan's smirk. My throat went dry. You're saying... Jonas reached into his coat and pulled out a small silver USB drive. He slid it across the table. The metal caught the sunlight, gleaming like a loaded weapon. Everything is on here. Your system, your patents, the licensing keys. As of this morning, the company has no enforceable claim. Legally, it belongs to you. My fingers closed around the drive. Its weight was electric in my palm. They fired you thinking they'd humiliate you, Jonas said quietly. Instead, they handed you the match that's about to set their house on fire. I sat back, heart pounding. I wanted to believe him, but my mind raced with questions. Could this really hold up? Contracts, patents, trusts. This wasn't the stuff I'd ever paid attention to. I built systems, not legal loopholes. They'll fight this, I whispered. Declan won't just roll over. Of course not, Jonas said. But they can't win. The patent is already approved, tied to the LLC. Their flagship product is locked without renewal keys. You hold those keys now. They'll try paperwork, threats, maybe even smear campaigns. None of it matters. They're trapped. I exhaled shakily, pressing the USB into my palm like an anchor. For the first time since that boardroom ambush, something other than despair flickered inside me. Not rage, not fear, something sharper. Hope. What do I do? I asked. Jonas leaned back, studying me. You decide how much you want them to bleed. Sell the rights to a competitor, negotiate from a position of power, or shut them down completely. The choice is yours. I stared at him, the enormity settling in. For years, I'd been the firewall that protected their empire. Now, I was the storm that could dismantle it. But another thought pressed harder against my chest. My mother. Her hospital bills had nearly drained me. Without my job's insurance, every treatment would push us deeper into debt. Declan thought firing me would corner me, force me to beg. Instead, he'd just handed me leverage worth hundreds of millions. I slipped the USB into my bag and forced my breathing steady. What's the first move? Jonas's lips curved into a knowing smile. Patience. Let them realize what they've done. By the end of today, the system will lock. Every executive, every VP, every stakeholder will see the alerts. Then we'll move. I glanced down at my hands. They weren't shaking anymore. The fear was still there, coiled tight. But now it had purpose. Jonas stood, slipping his coat over his shoulders. Stay invisible for now. Don't answer their calls. Don't react. Rage is a weapon, Laura, but only if you know when to draw it. He left me with those words, the bell above the cafe door chiming softly as he disappeared into the street. I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty chair across from me, the envelope still on the table, the USB heavy in my bag. Outside, the city roared with its usual noise, oblivious to the chaos that was about to erupt 13 floors above my old office. For the first time in 8 years, I wasn't defending someone else's empire. I was holding the fuse to blow it apart. And when the first alert hit their inboxes, they'd realize I wasn't gone. I was the reckoning they never saw coming. By the time I got home that afternoon, the storm had already started. My phone buzzed nonstop on the counter, vibrating across the surface like it was alive. Emails, missed calls, Slack notifications, all from people who hadn't dared look at me in the office that morning. I didn't touch it. I sat with a glass of water, staring at the USB drive on the table, the silver casing glinting under the kitchen light. At 2:11 p.m., the first subject line made me laugh out loud, a sound sharp and bitter in my quiet apartment. System alert. Deployment license expired. Please contact Callaway Systems for renewal. Not just my inbox. Every executive, every VIP, every department head who thought today was business as usual. Their entire global network had frozen in place. Updates suspended, patches locked, expansion projects stalled. All roads pointed to me, or rather to Callaway Systems, the LLC they didn't even realize existed until now. By 2:30, financial reporters were tweeting about unexpected outages at Ainsworth Global. I scrolled through the noise, calm on the outside, while something volcanic churned beneath my ribs. Inside that glass tower, I imagined the panic spreading like fire. Executives barking at IT teams, directors demanding answers. Declan's smug grin curdling into something ugly when he realized the empire he thought he controlled was in someone else's hands. Mine. The phone buzzed again. This time a voicemail. My hand hovered, but I didn't press play. I didn't need to. I could picture it clearly. Declan's voice, sharp with manufactured authority, demanding my cooperation. Maybe even a threat slipped between words. But Jonas's advice echoed in my head. Stay invisible. Rage is a weapon, Laura, but only if you know when to draw it. So I let it ring. By evening, news outlets were running with it. Unprecedented disruption. Internal turmoil. One headline even dared. Has Ainsworth Global lost control of its own system? I closed my laptop and leaned back on the couch. Exhaustion pressing down, but not enough to smother the quiet satisfaction rising inside me. For years, I'd sacrificed birthdays, weekends, dinners with Mom, all for that system. And in one arrogant decision, Declan had tried to erase me. Instead, he'd handed me leverage worth hundreds of millions. The next morning, I imagined the boardroom looked nothing like the polished sanctuary I'd sat in 2 days earlier. Reports said the CEO had cut his vacation short. Declan sat beside him, pale beneath his perfect tan, sleeves rolled up like a man on the edge. I could almost hear the IT chief stammering as he projected error screens across the wall. Every node requires a renewal key from Callaway Systems. Without it, we can't push updates, can't patch vulnerabilities, can't guarantee compliance. Then silence. Heavy, suffocating. Until Declan exploded. She can't do this. She signed a standard work for hire agreement. Except I hadn't. Jonas had made sure of that. The general counsel's voice would have been cool, detached. Actually, she didn't. Laura negotiated an IP carve-out clause tied to performance benchmarks. She met them all. The patents filed under Callaway Systems are enforceable. Legally, we have no claim I pictured the CEO's face draining of color, then flushing crimson. We funded her salary. We paid for the infrastructure. That system belongs to us. Not according to the contracts, the lawyer would reply. And right about then, someone in that room would have realized the truth. They hadn't just fired me. They had freed me. At 11:04 a.m., my phone buzzed with a new email. Subject line, strategic opportunity. It was from a competitor. Helix Dynamics. Short, polite, but urgent. We'd like to discuss licensing options for the Callaway Systems algorithm. Mid-9 figures, hundreds of millions. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. It wasn't just vindication. It was survival. Mom's hospital bills, my drained savings. The years of sacrifice they'd tried to bury under an envelope and a revoked badge. The decision didn't take long. 10 minutes later, I replied. Confirming availability. Let's meet. My reflection in the laptop screen looked calm, almost serene. No one could see the storm inside me. The fury, the relief, the hunger for justice. The company thought they'd humiliated me. Instead, they'd activated the safety net Jonas had woven months before. By lunchtime, legal teams were scrambling, PR departments were drafting emergency statements, and investors were calling for answers. And me? I was sipping coffee in my kitchen, watching their empire unravel, one system alert at a time. That afternoon, another email arrived. This one from the CEO himself. Laura, let's discuss terms. You have 48 hours. I smiled. Finally, they understood. The countdown had begun. The email from the CEO sat on my screen like a dare. Laura, let's discuss terms. You have 48 hours, 2 days. That was all it took for panic to break through their arrogance. I didn't reply immediately. I closed my laptop, slid it into my bag, and walked to the corner cafe. Silence is strategy. Every extra hour without an answer tightened the noose. By the time I arrived, financial reporters were circling like sharks. Articles spoke of leadership turmoil and system paralysis. Declan's name appeared more than once, usually followed by words like nepotism and reckless. His golden boy shine was cracking. That evening, Jonas called. His tone was calm, but underneath I heard the satisfaction. They'll push hard tomorrow. Don't bend. They'll think filing emergency patents or contracts can save them. It won't. He was right. The next morning, my phone lit up with forwarded messages from contacts still inside. The boardroom had turned into a pressure cooker. The general counsel laid out a fragile plan: file an emergency patent, argue prior ownership because the company had funded my salary and infrastructure. Risky, she'd admitted, but it's our only option. Declan, desperate for control, had seized it. Do it. File it now. We'll bury her in paperwork before she can blink. If only he knew. By 10 a.m., my phone buzzed with a push notification. USPTO filing confirmation. Callaway Systems, patent number 1,189,472. Approved 2 weeks ago. I exhaled slowly, almost laughing. Jonas and I had set the trap months earlier. They weren't chasing a loophole. They were running headfirst into a brick wall. Minutes later, another alert appeared. Emergency filing rejected. Existing registration on record. I pictured Declan's face when those words landed in front of him. His smirk fading, his bravado collapsing. I imagined the board shifting uncomfortably while the CEO's temper exploded across the room. Jonas messaged me a single word. Beautiful. I let myself smile. That afternoon, Helix Dynamics confirmed our meeting. The Grand Meridian Hotel. Ironic, considering it was the same place Declan had thrown his birthday gala just a week earlier. The party that started all this. Walking through the hotel's marble lobby, I kept my expression controlled. Cameras flashed nearby as journalists loitered, hunting for scraps of truth. I didn't stop. They didn't know my name yet. They would. Inside the suite, Helix's CEO greeted me with a firm handshake. Miss Callaway, we've admired your work for years. What happened at Ainsworth Global? Their loss is our opportunity. I sat across from him, smoothing my jacket, my voice steady. I'm not here to discuss the past. I'm here to discuss numbers. The negotiations were clinical, almost cold. Lawyers scribbled notes. Analysts whispered over spreadsheets. The first offer slid across the table. $320 million for global licensing rights, with expansion into 3 continents. I traced the figures with my eyes, keeping my face neutral. Inside, my pulse raced, but I remembered Jonas's advice. Control isn't in the reaction. It's in restraint. Well, review, I said calmly, standing. But know this, I'm not in a rush. The longer this drags, the more leverage I have. The CEO nodded, impressed. He knew I was right. Back at home, I drafted an email to the Ainsworth CEO. Subject, license renewal. Body, you have 48 hours. After that, the value of your company begins to evaporate. Choose wisely. No threats, no drama. Just a deadline and a truth they couldn't outrun. By the following morning, I heard the board had gathered again, this time with emergency legal teams. Stacks of contracts and laptops cluttered the polished table where I used to sit. Declan looked worn, his tie loosened, eyes bloodshot. We can fight this, he insisted. She's smart, but not invincible. The lawyer's response was sharp. With respect, Declan, she outmaneuvered us months ago. Every patent is filed. Every clause airtight. The LLC owns everything. The CEO rubbed his temples, voice hoarse. So what do we do? Silence. For the first time, I imagined they truly saw me. Not as an employee to discard, but as the storm they had created. That afternoon, the CEO finally replied to my message. His tone was stripped of arrogance. Laura, we're ready to negotiate. I closed the laptop slowly, savoring the moment. Declan had wanted to test my loyalty. He'd succeeded, just not in the way he expected. The 48-hour clock was ticking, and now every second belonged to me. They walked into the conference room like men still pretending to own the room. The CEO's stride was stiff, his jaw locked tight. Beside him, Declan looked pale, his perfect tan now a fragile mask. The arrogance that once dripped from him was gone, replaced by the brittle shell of a man who knew the ground beneath him was crumbling. I sat at the center of the table, calm, composed, a glass of water untouched at my side. Jonas sat to my left, his presence radiating quiet power. the kind that comes from already knowing the ending. Neither of us rose to greet them. That in itself was a victory. "Laura," the CEO said finally, his voice tight as wire. "We're here to make this right." I tilted my head slightly. "Right for whom?" Declan leaned forward, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Let's not drag this out. We're prepared to—" Jonas cut in, his voice smooth and firm. "Sit down." It wasn't a suggestion. They obeyed. Jonas reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick document. He dropped it on the polished table with a sound that cracked like a gunshot. The CEO flinched. Declan's eyes darted to the bold header. Irrevocable trust agreement. "This," Jonas began, his tone like cold steel, "was executed under Delaware law 6 months ago. It holds one asset, Callaway Systems, and that LLC now owns every patent, every line of code, every licensing key Laura created." "That's impossible," the CEO snapped. "It's binding," Jonas replied, unflinching. "You signed the original carve-out clauses yourself. I advised you to protect her. Instead, you let nepotism dictate your decisions. This," he tapped the document with a single finger, "is the price of arrogance." For the first time, Declan's composure cracked. "She was an employee." She can," I said quietly, folding my hands on the table. "And she did." The CEO slumped back, eyes glassy as the math hit him. Hundreds of millions evaporated. Contracts stalled. Investors circling like vultures. I leaned forward, my voice steady. "You didn't just fire me. You freed me, and now your empire runs on something you don't control." The room went silent, thick as smoke. Declan's mouth opened, but no words came. The CEO rubbed his temples, defeated. Jonas sat back, calm as ever, because he knew what I knew. The fight was already over. 2 days later, I walked into the Grand Meridian's largest conference hall. Chandeliers glittered overhead, cameras flashed, and reporters craned for a glimpse of the story they'd been chasing all week. At the long table draped in navy silk, a plaque bore my name in crisp black letters: Chief Innovation Officer, Callaway Systems. I paused for a heartbeat, letting the weight of those words settle. Then I walked forward, every click of my heels echoing like punctuation marks in a sentence 8 years in the making. Across the hall, lenses swung toward me, shutters firing in rapid bursts. A week ago, I was slipping out of my office with nothing but an envelope in hand. Today, I was the headline. I smoothed the fabric of my jacket and looked straight into the cameras. My reflection glimmered in the dark glass of their lenses. Calm, poised, unshakable. The Helix Dynamics CEO stepped to the podium. His voice carried across the room. "We are proud to announce a historic licensing agreement with Callaway Systems. Valuation, $940 million. Applause erupted. The room flashed with light. I remembered Declan's words in that boardroom, smug and venomous. "Don't ever think you're more important than my family." I let the memory linger, then smiled. Slow, deliberate. Into the microphone, I spoke softly. "You were right, Declan. Family is everything. Yours just lost it all to me." The crowd roared. Somewhere in the back, a journalist's voice cut through the noise. "Ms. Callaway, how does it feel to hold the future of an entire industry in your hands?" I looked straight into the nearest lens. Every sacrifice, every late night, every moment with my mother I'd traded flashing through my mind. "It feels," I said, voice steady, "like the beginning." The cameras exploded with light. And for the first time in years, the storm inside me went still. They underestimated me because I stayed quiet, because I didn't play their games. What they didn't understand is that silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this. Your worth is never defined by the people who fail to see it. You are not disposable. You are not replaceable. And when someone tries to erase you, That's your cue to pick up the pen and write the next chapter yourself. So if you've ever been doubted, pushed aside, or made to feel invisible, let this be your reminder. Power isn't gone. It's waiting. And when the time comes, use it with precision.